There is something so satisfying about a well-drawn isometric dungeon map. Now, drawing one in the first place really isn't all that hard, but in this video, we're going to focus on those artistic elements that can really help you bring your isometric maps to the next level. Hi everyone, my name is Nate, and you are watching WASD20, a channel about tabletop RPGs and fantasy maps. In this video, I'll be taking you through my process of drawing isometric dungeon maps, and I happen to think they look pretty good, but understand there are tons of different styles out there. I'll mention a couple others in the video as well. Now, before we get into the drawing, I want to give a huge thank you to my sponsor for this video, Dirt Cheap Dungeons, makers of affordable modular dungeon sets for your tabletop. After you've drawn your isometric dungeon map, you can bring it all to life on your table with one of their sets of dungeon walls and doors in a variety of lengths, enabling you to build great looking dungeons. They're made of durable plastic, they have a really nice texture, they fit together easily, and best of all, they are compact and portable. They offer several different sets, so go check them out for yourself at dirtcheapdungeons.com. Link down below. Alright, so here we go folks. Today we're going to be drawing an isometric dungeon map. The first thing you're going to need is some isometric graph paper. Do you need it? No, but it's going to make your life way easier as it gives you some guidelines for maintaining that isometric perspective throughout. Alright, so I got a pad of this stuff. I just got this on Amazon a couple years ago, and I'll put a link to this or something similar down in the video description. You can pick it up for yourself. Or you can always find some printable isometric graph paper. So I've got some of that too, and I'll put a link to that down in the video description. So if you're working in Photoshop, you can just pull that in, or you can print it out and get going right now along with me. So as we're thinking about an isometric dungeon, a couple things to consider. First off, I'm going to be going mostly for this style of this map that I made a little while back, coffee stains and all. So you can pretty much do any sort of dungeon. But one thing I like to think about is having lots of verticality. So kind of changes in elevation can be fun. So you see this right here. It can just add a little something, and it just looks really cool in my opinion on the map. So you can see I've got lots of staircases, I've got little ledges and things like that as it kind of slowly winds down my paper. But any dungeon will do really. The place you're going to want to start is with the basic floor plan. I recommend using pencil. I'm going to be using pen because it shows up on camera a whole lot better. But as we start here, we can think about finding the corners of our room. And we just follow the diagonal lines. We're not going to be using the vertical lines for our basic floor plan. So I'm going to find some corners here. Let me go down here. And then we go over here. Make sure I'm lining them up right. There we go. You can always count the squares if you need to. And then you can use a straight edge. I usually just freehand it, but I happen to have a straight edge here, so let's do that. And one thing to definitely consider is using that pencil, because it will save you a lot of headaches if you decide, for example, that, well, I drew this line here, but there's actually now, I want to make a path out of that room right there. That's going to be a big pain if you already have a pen line there. So you can either just leave lots of blank spaces for things like that, or you can pencil it in so you know what goes where. The same thing is true if I decide, for example, that I want to put a barrel right here, okay? And if I've already drawn this line here and I want to put a barrel along that wall, that's going to be a little bit problematic. So I'm going to put my barrel in here now, and then as I draw this line, you can see the barrel nicely interrupts that line, giving the impression that it is sticking up out of the floor. All right, so that's kind of a nice thing to do. So just plan ahead and don't lay your ink down too soon is the point. So I'm going to go over to this actual map that I'm working on, and you will see me leaving lots of blank spaces as I go over the basic floor plans. You'll also notice that not all my walls are straight, so definitely think about that. If you're doing a cave complex, you're not going to have lots of straight walls. It's going to be much more jagged, but you can still kind of make little points on the corners of those rooms, so to speak, the closest thing you have to corners. You may also notice I skipped over explaining the staircase, but we're going to go back to that in a minute. I definitely will explain how to do staircases. It can be a little bit tricky. So you can see that going down to the cave level, I did this kind of vertical shaft. It's actually a trap door. And then I'm doing another one right here that's actually going to be a spiked pit trap. It's the same sort of concept, just do a little square and then carry the lines vertically down. Next, you can see I'm also drawing a raised ledge area. So you can see how I did that. I just kind of left some space, drew a little squiggly line, and now I'm drawing some lines going down to kind of meet it. It's just, you know, probably a couple feet high in this case, but those little touches do add something to the look of the map, I find. And of course, they can add some new gameplay elements as well. All right, so staircases. Honestly, this is my least favorite part of doing isometric dungeon maps. I find it pretty tricky and just kind of finicky to make it look good. But what you want to consider is having a good long run and a little rise, right? We want something that's not going to be too steep in general. So I might go here 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'll go up 2, okay? So I've counted 4 squares out, and then I'm doing 2 up. And now what I can do is I can just draw a line from here to here. All right. Now, how wide do I want my staircase to be? Well, in this case, I want it to be 2 squares wide, so it's about 10 feet. And I'm going to be drawing a line from here to here. All right, so that is the basic shape of my staircase. I'm sorry if that's hard to see with my pencil, but now I can go ahead and I can get my pen work going. Now, one way to do this would just be to draw lines straight across like this all the way up, and just kind of give the impression that this stairs. It communicates the basic idea that this is a staircase. But if you want to get really technical with it and really detailed, you can do that too. And the way you would do it is you would go out following your horizontal lines. So whenever there is the stair going out, well, first let's go down. Okay, so we go down 1, and then we go out, and we try to stay parallel to these horizontal lines, and we meet that. Okay, and I'm not very good at this, but here I go. I'm doing it. And we're just going to try to keep an eye on having our corners meet this pencil line that we already did. And again, I just find this tricky. Like, I'm already getting my lines going there and not parallel to my my diagonal line here like I should be. But that's okay, not the end of the world. And there we go. All right, and it gets even harder because now I have to replicate that line over here. And yeah. So anyway, it's not my favorite process. You can see me kind of struggling with it on my own map here. And then you can see me going in to connect, and I get a little bit messed up in there because my lines didn't match exactly. If you're using Photoshop, you can easily just, copy and paste your one line to the other side, but it's not so simple on paper. So again, if you want a little easier method, you can just kind of go in and go like this, and that communicates the basic idea. Now with the rougher cavern sort of staircases that are just, very roughly hewn into the stone, it's a lot easier. You can see me just doing some very rough kind of squiggly lines here, and then eventually I go back and I draw some lines kind of connecting them like you see here on this map. One big question you should ask yourself is, do you want to draw walls on your isometric map? So I usually don't. I will draw doors and some other things you'll see in a second, but this map here on the left from Jog Brogson has pretty complete walls, and I think it looks really good. You can see some cutouts in certain areas for better viewing. And then this map on the right from Nicholas over at Paths Peculiar is also really great. It has more of that just corner walls look, just little impressions of wall here or there, and I think it really does add to the look of the map overall. So on my map, I am not going to be doing any walls, but I am going to be doing some doorways sticking up into the wall space. And on this one in particular, I'm trying to give it a nice thick door frame to kind of give it that 3D isometric feel as well. Normally I just do a couple of panels, but I wanted to try a little more dimension on this one. And then you're also going to see me doing some other things that are sticking up into the space that the walls would occupy. So I'm going to speed through a lot of this here because it took a while, but you'll see me doing tables, bookshelves, more doorways. I do a weapon rack here, a fireplace, some barrels. You'll see me doing some stalagmites and some torches. Had a lot of fun doing this little pile of treasure here. Just all kinds of fun little details that really can make your map come alive and add to the look of it, and make for some interesting environments for gameplay. I like to add these kind of wooden support beams in some of the natural cavern sections. Even though there's not doors there, it kind of gives us the idea that there is a doorway or an opening here. Here you can see me finishing up my spiked pit trap, and yeah, that'll be a fun one. Now that brings up a good point. This is kind of a DM's reference map here. This is not meant for players. And honestly, I don't find isometric maps all that practical. They're really just a lot of fun to make. They're beautiful to look at, in my opinion, and they're great as a DM reference. I really enjoy having them in modules and adventures. And I do find them pretty easy to translate to my table, whether I'm using dungeon tiles or dirt cheap dungeons or just a battle map. Alright, our next step is going to be to give a little dimension to our floors by drawing some vertical lines on the corners of our rectangular rooms, just going down a little bit, about 5 feet of map space, and then connecting those. And it takes these from being flat planes to now being prismatic. Which is not really more accurate. That's not what's really going on here, these prismatic chunks floating in space, but it just looks cooler to me than a flat plane and gives it a feeling of substance. Now on the more natural cavern sections, I'm giving it a rougher bottom to it, and just kind of making some jagged rocks sticking down here, and that just looks a little more natural for that style for me. And then on the upper part, I kept it very straight. But in the past, I have, on this map, you can see on the straight part, I did still make a nice jagged, kind of rocky bottom to it, and that can still look good too. Now, because I'm not super organized, I didn't add the detail here. I actually did that a bit later, but you can see me adding just a bit of detail here, some little lines, a bit of shading and such on the jagged surfaces. Alright, next up, the floors themselves. Now, in the more rectangular rooms, I decided to go with a pretty traditional, simple tile. Not getting real fancy with this one. I've definitely done more intricate patterns and interesting sorts of tiles in the past, but in this one, just a simple, classic kind of 5-foot block that both serves as a grid and shows that this is a tiled floor. These are stone slabs here. And then I also carry that down a little bit onto the edge, again, just to kind of increase that feeling of dimension here, that these tiles really have some substance to them. I think it just looks cool. Then in the lower section, I toyed with not doing any grid at all, and in the past I have often done that, but I actually do like to be able to see a little something. So in this section, I make it much more faint, and I'm actually mostly just stippling along the lines. And here and there I'm stippling outside the lines too, and just kind of giving it more of a natural cavern floor feel while still having a grid. Alright, the next step for me is just kind of an artistic style thing, and I am just taking a nice thick pen and I'm giving the entire map, all of the outer edges, a nice thick dark outline. Just making those lines thicker there. I'm using my Pigma Micron graphic pen that came with my set of Pigma Microns, and I'll put a link to this set down in the video description. And yeah, it works really well for this, and it's just something that I think makes it really pop, makes it stand out a lot more. Alright, the final step here on my map is going to be just to add little bits of extra detail. So this is mostly in the form of little piles of rocks. I mean, just something as simple and easy as that can really bring the map to life a little bit more. A couple little piles of scrap wood and things like that. Adding a bit more detail to some of my surfaces, like the rug in the upper room, and also the door, adding some like runes or something to the door. Just finding little things that I feel like could use a bit more detail. While I'm finishing this up here, I do want to mention that The Mappening, a live map drawing stream that I do occasionally here on WASD20, is coming soon, and the next one is going to be all about drawing isometric dungeon maps. So come hang out with me on Sunday, the 24th of May at 2 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and I'm going to be drawing an isometric dungeon map live with you all. So bring your own paper, come hang out in the chat. It's always a great time. You can mark your calendar. Once I have a link for that, I will put it down in a pinned comment, and I would love to see you there. Lastly, I want to give a huge thank you to the WASD20 patrons. These people are making it happen for me. I am so grateful for their support on a monthly basis. It enables me to make these videos, and patrons also get some pretty cool rewards, like weekly live map drawing streams with me. So go check it all out over at patreon.com. If you get value from these videos, I would really appreciate your support. All right, that's going to do it for this one, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. Here we have our finished dungeon map. I don't know much about this place yet, but I'm imagining maybe some kind of temple hewn into the mountains with also a secret passageway to a hidden area. Something like that, I don't know. Maybe I'll build that out and figure out how it fits into my world. And feel free to use it for yourself as well. I'll put a link to the finished product down in the video description. That's all for this one, everybody. Take care. You'll see me again very soon.